Seventh floor.
We'll see you around the timeline. Feels good to be back.
I think that Rollup is one of the most premier media brands in crypto, and Andy and Robbie are great experts at everything they talk about, and it's my favorite podcast.
Adding it to my library as we speak.
Potentially multi-chain deployments.
We are at DevConnect Day 1 here. I'm Jesse from Base. JP Morgan, BlackRock, DTCC, Fidelity, the entire thing was just institutions. It's next level. This industry is going to the next level. And guys, I don't know what else to say. I'm bullish.
He said it, he finally said it.
I'm so bullish.
Andy's bullish, I'm bullish, we're bullish. Is headed to the top. If we're not already at the top, we're going to the top.
We're going.
Rollup is my favorite.
From all walks of life, all over the world, all over this industry, come together for the Rollup.
Zoom out. The institutions aren't coming, they're simply here. It's the golden age of guys. Get right. Let's go. Zoom out. The institutions aren't coming. They're simply here. It's the golden age of crypto, guys. Get right. Let's go.
Welcome to the nest. See you on the show.
Bada bing, bada boom.
There we are.
Welcome to the Tokenization Tower, ladies and gentlemen. We are so back. We are live from the financial capital of the world. I'm here with Robert Klages.
Wow, full name talk.
The
Feels
good.
Post Cathie Wood, we're coming out with a whole new energy. We're going full name. Andy's got a shirt button unbuttoned. We're feeling good. We got the full view of New York City behind the Tokenization Tower.
Shout out to Plume, baby. Shout out to Plume bringing on-chain asset management. We had the deputy CEO of the CSOP on last week. Big Hong Kong asset manager.
Big
here
Hong
in the
Kong
tower.
energy.
Big Hong Kong energy. Let's get it. Let's get into today's topics, man. We're live from the Tokenization Tower. Let's give some love to everybody who's in the tower, everyone who's pushing the tower forward. Ladies and gentlemen, we got Markets and Weather Live and Chainlink CBO and 21Shares CIO joining the show today. Lovely, lovely day in New York. I tell you that much. It is a beautiful, beautiful day. It is not a bullish day necessarily. I am holding on for dear life with uranium, and I hope to be continuing to hold on for dear life.
We are right there with you with
on a bit of a pullback
with crypto as well. We'll get into the market prices a little bit later, but I mean, tons of news to go through. I mean, macro news too. We got a lot of earnings calls this week. Stocks are going to be in for a whirl, and then was it UAE leaving OPEC today? Shook some things up in the oil market. Pretty incredible what's happening. The Iran war chugging along. And we're just monitoring the situation.
Indeed we are. Ladies and gentlemen, let's get to the markets and weather. We got a ton of news that we want to crank through today. Before we do, let me tell you about Frax, our leading stablecoin partner, building the future for on-chain money, open, stable, borderless. For more information, start using the future of digital money. Visit frax.finance. Guys, it is a beautiful 63 degrees in the tower today. Feels like 63. It's sunny. It's definitely springtime. At this point, I would confidently say that trench coat season is over.
It's done.
Shout out to everybody wearing a trench coat, man. Gotta let them have it. Gotta let them have it, ladies and gentlemen.
RIP to the official trench coat sponsor. See you again next year.
Yeah. Our lovely weather is presented by Relay.link, some of the best cross-chain swaps in the market. Use Relay.link to swap your tokens cross-chain now. Let's get into the markets. It is, one could say it is a little bit bipolar out there. Bitcoin 75.8, Ethereum 22.75, Solana 83, Chainlink around that 9.2 mark, near 1.3. Feels like a lot of this hasn't changed since we even started looking at these, Rob.
Yep.
Like, I feel like it's been constantly at these prices for quite a while.
It's been choppy. It has
been.
I remember, Bitcoin was hanging around the mid 60s mark, 68 or so, pushed up to the 75 mark. And I remember we were having a conversation about, once we went 75, 77, that felt great, but people aren't satisfied with 77 for too long
anymore, right? Yeah, it was best thing to be at 75, 2 weeks ago? And now it's like, now we're pulling back a bit and people are kind of scared.
Yeah, it does seem that way. Obviously, a lot of this feels very macro correlated. Ceasefire didn't happen.
Yeah.
60-day timeline is up tomorrow, I believe.
Really?
I believe so, but obviously these things get pushed back here, there, everywhere. So we'll see.
Equities, meanwhile, absolutely ripping. Stocks at all-time highs, QQQ at all-time highs, NVIDIA at all-time highs. Oil actually was pushing quite a bit up as we as we talked about with them leaving OPEC, the UAE, supposedly that's going to allow them to produce a lot more oil.
Right.
However, the issue is that, well, if the oil can't leave Iran, then, well, it's not really good for anything if the straits close. Let's get into the news. We've got a ton of different news today. We're coming off the Cathie Wood episode. We'll debrief about that as well. Before we do, let me tell you about Near, the blockchain designed for AI native applications and autonomous agents. Start developing today at near.org.
Near did have
AI,
very
or
recent
near.com.
upgrade to Iron Claw, which I'm excited to dig into as well. I believe they tightened up some of the security measures. And I mean, look, Ilya is just continuing to ship. It's pretty incredible to see. So yeah, big shout out to our official AI partner in Near.
Yeah, I mean, look, this is an interesting podcast timing release. You know, like, obviously this Stani Ave situation has been evolving, right? And it's been rapidly evolving. And GSR dropped this podcast, I think, a couple of days ago. And so now we're going to listen into what DeFi's biggest challenge is, which is kind of a bit of a funny timing, but let's hear what Stan has to say. It's biggest challenge, tokenization. Biggest challenge, tokenization. I think the biggest challenge is going to be whether or not we can stay safe out here.
Is the tokenization piece. What to tokenize, what is the value proposition, what is the right product. I think a lot of institutions, banks, asset managers that are focusing on enabling crypto custody, crypto trading are doing low-hanging fruits, and I think that provides enormous amount of access.
Low-hanging fruit.
Same for fintechs. I think the challenge is to figure out the tokenization part. Like, how do you tokenize what you mentioned, Frank, earlier? Like, wouldn't it be nice that we have this an environment where you have crypto, equities, private, credit, all this value infrastructure in the same environment, and you can just choose what you want to hold in your portfolio, borrow against, and how do we get there, right? So this is a really big problem because you have to create some sort of catalyst in the RW space. And I think that's the sort of like a challenge that everyone is trying to figure out. No one has a particularly clear answer to that. And I think we're going to see a lot of attempts on tokenization. Some of them will grow a little bit, someone won't. But there's going to be one or two examples which will move the needle.
Yeah,
So I'm gonna agree with Stani. Aside from the hack, which seems to be getting cleared up, hopefully we don't get another $300 million hack. We've shown resiliency and recovering from there. Some implementation steps to take place, but seems like the money is committed. So we will get a resolution, a positive resolution here. Aside from the security of these things and preventing, something like this from happening again, I do agree that tokenization is the first step in unlocking what we've talked about as the neo-finance thesis. Tokenization is what ultimately takes all these off-chain assets on-chain. It's what allows a new asset class to be deposited into DeFi. And ultimately, this is what I think we believe is going to re-rate a lot of these DeFi protocols, is unlocking new asset classes. I believe this can be both speculative and non-speculative assets. You can take equities, you can take treasuries, you can take all these RWAs, private credit, all these things, as long as they're secure. And I'm of the mind that these institutions coming into the space provide extra due diligence and extra compliance manpower to ultimately protect these deposits further. And so, yeah, I do believe that institutional tokenization is the catalyst that is going to unlock net new asset classes for DeFi.
We got New Type saying, I remember Andy's top blast uranium speech in the past. Thank you, New Type. I'm glad.
We're gonna get.
If only you knew the mental derangement suffered from top blasting in size. New Type. Perhaps you do know what that feels like. Sometimes we all
We all know what that feels like. Polymarket building their own L1. This proves that Polygon has always been a psyop. I don't care how many times people try to show Polygon as an active chain. LOL. New type is coming in hot today, my boy. My boy. Polymarket is building in their own chain, though, supposedly at least. So,
Yeah,
let's move on.
That's what we've heard. Yep.
Circle Ventures acquires Aave to strengthen their DeFi infrastructure. They confirmed the strategic purchase of Aave tokens to support the long-term development of decentralized financial infra. This acquisition is a primary component of the DeFi United initiative. Interesting. So I don't really know how Circle buying Aave is all that part of this DeFi United initiative, other than like DeFi United, let's not let Aave's token go down a lot. Look, they've already surprised the market by how much they've gotten out of this initiative. I think they're well beyond their goal. And I saw Mike Dudas tweet. He was like, man, I'm going to start, Dudas United and put my public key out there and, start a GoFundMe. Now, look, I think the Aave team's been under a lot of fire. And I think there's nothing wrong with this. I think it's awesome to see, teams coming together. I don't really know what this, hey, we're buying Aave really means, though.
I think it means that they bought some Aave. And I also think that this is Circle Ventures, as I understand it. It's not Circle Primary. I think they're just staking a claim. I also don't think this has a lot to do with DeFi United. They're claiming that maybe they're trying to save PR, save some face, claiming that they're coming in to support the situation. Yeah, I tend to think like, look, they see Aave at less than $100 per token. They could be looking at this as a potential value play, assuming that the DeFi United campaign to resolve the situation goes well. And they still have tons of integrations, and they're going to be coming out of this just fine. I could see how Aave, which is down from almost, was it $350 in not that long ago, last summer, so less than a year ago. I could see how they're looking at this as a potential liquid token play. They see Aave in some deep value territory. They figured, look, we'll pick up some tokens. Maybe it pays off.
I mean, it just signals that they're going to be, a believer, that they're going to figure it out, and that the protocol's not over, and that they're going to support their bags. And obviously, there's a lot of that USDC that is kind of, still frozen there. And they want to be an active force in getting that unfrozen, help their users out. So let's move on from Circle Aave. It's definitely a good little move by Circle, but nothing really else to add here on Aave. Aave price kind of hovering, still pretty low, but holding the lows, which I think is important. The fact that the broad market also held up and held the lows during all this was really important for the ETH holders. So let's move on here.
This next one, I saw Andy put this in our curators chat this morning.
I've never seen a poster like this. I mean, this was insane. So Rob and I both grew up in Florida. Rob's probably more of a Heat fan, but the Magic was the closest team to me.
Oh, you were a Magic fan? OG Dwight Howard days?
Dude, I'm all on the Magic. If the Magic win this series, that means that there might be a chance for me to catch a game when I'm back in Florida. Okay. I'll for sure be flooring it. Hopefully the Tampa Bay Lightning win as well. Let's watch this video. Sound on. This guy absolutely eggplanted this other dude right in the face. Full on. Should have been an and one. Bro, this was insane. Send him to the floor, bro. Dude. Bro. And then you had Ja Morant celebrating for...
goodness.
Dude. Insane. Insane poster, man. Magic up 3-1 in this series, 8 seed versus the number 1 seed.
Wow.
And you absolutely got to love to see it. Detroit Pistons might be the worst number 1 seed I have ever seen in the NBA. They are ass. They are ass, dude. Cade Cunningham with like 8 turnovers yesterday or something. They're so bad. I hope the Magic win. I saw this other tweet that was like, the Magic are like the worst, best team I've ever seen. They have no plays. They literally just run like scrimmage ball. They just look at matchups, try to isolate somebody. And yeah, I mean, they're up 3-1 against the number 1 seed. If they win this, that would be unreal.
That's insane. And then I know on the West side, Denver's down. They were down 3-1. They were still favorites to win the series when they were down 3-1. Now they're down 3-2. I think that's against, was it Utah?
Against the Timberwolves.
Oh, the Timberwolves,
and
yeah.
the Timberwolves lost 2 of their biggest players as well.
Yeah.
So pretty, dude, that is just like insane. I was watching this live and I was like, yo, I was texting the boys like, yo, Magic her up. Like they're about to win.
He gathered 2 steps and lifted off on that guy. And
Insane.
the guy was caught flat-footed.
Cooper Flag, Rookie of the Year. Guy's an absolute unit as well. I don't think anyone's going to be able to take down Shy and the Thunder. Let's move on here from our lovely Orlando Magic. Into tomorrow, we have one of the most anticipated token launches of the year, of the cycle, Mega ETH TGE. Play the damn video. Let's see what Mega Team cooked up for us. His brand first chain. And then Robbie will tell you guys about what we got for you on Friday. And guys, let us know in the chat what you thought about that dunk. If you could do that. Yo, some anime shit.
Yeah, this video is very on brand here from the
Yo.
Didn't expect nothing less but a schizo kaleidoscope of a video here. It was bubblegum pop music. Let's go.
Yo.
8, 9, 10. Just getting started.
Wow. Feel like I just went to Tokyo and back. Take me back to the underground basement karaoke bars, screaming with Rob and our lovely guy on the team, Nero. Beyond 10 lemon sours, man. What a video that was, that soundtrack. I mean, how can you not be bullish? Let's look at the poly market here. I believe it's about 95% chance, Rob, that the Mega ETH TGE is over 800 million.
While you're pulling this up, let me tell you guys about what we got on Friday. On Friday, I'm going to be going live with the entire Mega ETH ecosystem. All of the applications planning on launching with the TGE on Thursday. We're going to be following up TGE fresh on Friday with the entire ecosystem. I think we're going to get somewhere like 7 or 8 or 9 builders of the top apps in the Mega ETH ecosystem joining us live. You guys will hear about the top opportunities, top apps on Mega ETH fresh off of the launch. So definitely check it out. We'll be live at our usual time. Tune in 1 p.m. Eastern, and you guys will have everything brought to you guys straight from the Mega ETH founders. What do you got? What do you got over there for us?
It's 94% to be over 800 million by 1 day after launch. The Mega FTV. It is 88% over $1 billion and 61% over 1.5 billion. If you guys remember the Fluffles, I am a Fluffle holder. I contributed 1 ETH at about $3,000 per ETH into the Fluffle. I have the Soulbound NFT. Fluffles will get 25,000 tokens on TGE. This thing launches at $1 billion. I'm gonna hit for a 6x on that thing. If it launches and hits into $2 billion, be a 12x. straight to El Salvador. Yes, sir. Let's get it. Let's go, Mega. Come on, Shu Yao. Let's go, Namek. Let's pump this thing, all right? Fluffles are going to be in business, Rob. I'll tell you that.
Let's go. Fluffles are in business. Love to hear
Let's rip it, baby girl.
There we go.
Let's rip it. Let's rip it, baby girl. All right. Let's all calm down here, all right? The market's in the gutter, Rob. Let's all slow down.
I'm pretty excited about this trip to El Salvador. Why don't you tell the people what you're going to be doing down there?
Going down to Bitcoin Beach to find Nayib Bukele and propose to him to be the official sponsor of the Rollup. Gonna go to the office and be like, hola, ¿cómo está? Todo bien, necesito un poco más dinero, por favor, ahora. Necesito más para mi televisión. All right, let's get on it, man.
Necesito más Bitcoin out here.
Exactly. And the somberness returns. DeFi United issued a technical plan from the Aave side to restore the RSE backing.
Yeah, this doesn't have to
April 18th bridge exploit.
This doesn't have to be somber here. Look, we've got 300 million in Kumbaya payments from the DeFi ecosystem at large. This was an entire community rally. The pure essence of Kumbaya came together around Aave and helped to bring this thing back to life. It would have been rough. Stani would have had to sell his mansion. That is not the case. And so we're excited. Ultimately, Aave's doing good work. They didn't get hacked. Let's be clear. It was layer 0 that got exploited, if we're being honest about things.
Yeah.
Kelp DAO didn't really help in the matter, except for 2,000 ETH that they helped to commit. But overall, the entire community was able to provide the ETH. This is effectively like, libertarian bailout.
Yeah. Yep. And so the affected positions on Aave will be cleared through temporary Oracle adjustments, enabling controlled liquidations on Aave and Compound. They should recover approximately 13,000 ETH and 16,776 ETH, respectively. And then once complete, the RS ETH backing will be fully restored. Markets will be stabilized. Users will be able to withdraw their funds, and normal operations will resume with all temporary changes reverted. That would be the best case outcome, guys. We will continue to monitor the RSE situation without harping on it too much. Let's get into what happened today and why my uranium bag is down 4%, which I'm not too happy about. Today, the UAE comes out and says that they're going to leave OPEC and OPEC Plus effective May 1st, 2026. Following its exit, the UAE will continue to act responsibly, bringing additional production to market in a gradual and measured manner, aligning with demand and market conditions. As we said earlier on the show, guys, if the strait is not open and the US blockade persists, does not really matter if the UAE produces a ton more oil because that oil cannot leave. However, as being part of the OPEC and OPEC Plus, they are restricted in the amount of oil that they can create. So in a perfect world, this would allow the oil price to go down significantly and for more oil to be produced. But it's just crazy. The entire geopolitical energy grid is changing as a result of a fat orange man pressing a big red button. I mean, this is just, there are consequences to your accident, or there are consequences to your actions, Mr. GGT. And here we are, us, uranium holders, paying the price.
Oh man, I wonder if they can move the oil over land from Dubai or UAE through Oman.
What are they just gonna do? Just
then they can
put on a camel, just two barrels, and just
put it on a train. They got trains in Oman.
For sure.
And just take it right out through the Arabian Sea. Put it on a tanker out there. Ship it through another flotation device. No, I think, look, this is part of this bigger geopolitical reorganization. You're breaking apart an oil cartel. And ultimately, this is more free marketism. This is positive. This will, ultimately have effects that extend beyond the extensiveness of the war. This is the end of the petrodollar, which which I think is the most conclusive result of this departure from OPEC, from the UAE. Once the dollar is no longer backed by the full faith and confidence of the Saudi Arabian oil pipelines, I think it's pretty important that we find other reserves. We find other ways to maintain the value of the US dollar.
Sure.
And this is why you're seeing nationalistic policies all over the world. You're seeing the UAE leave this international cabal, take matters into their own hands. You see the reshoring of manufacturing in the US. This is happening in China. You see things in Japan, in the EU. All of this is, hey, we've got to fend for ourselves. We're no longer trusting or have confidence in our friends, our neighbors, in our international pacts. And so we're going to see a multipolar world where everyone's going to be very hands-on their own stuff, if you will. Obviously, this is...
We got a couple comments for you, Rob. I don't know if you want to hear them.
Let's hear them.
One says, bring out a ton. That is that is the best comment.
I want to hear... why wouldn't I want to hear that? Let's bring out a ton.
The other comment is, you mean the Jews attacking Iran? And then the other comment after was bring out a ton. And I thought that was pretty comical.
That's an ill-timed comment. What a sound effect from our boy.
But no, we do not mean the Jews attacking Iran. We are a religious sensitive show. We do not talk about these types of religious warfare. But we do talk about is data centers being transformed from Bitcoin mining facilities.
The Jews
to
aren't
data
even
centers.
attacking Iran. They're attacking Lebanon. So it's a mute point right there. Tell us more about Galaxy's data center, Andy.
Crypto NFT, we will bring out a ton. We can do that. Don't you worry. All right, not a long time ago, Galaxy was a Bitcoin mine. Today, Helios is an operational AI data center. First data hall was delivered to CoreWeave at Helios, Galaxy's data center campus in West Texas. And they literally took down this entire Bitcoin mine, pivoted into a AI data center. This is a sign of the times. Let's play the video and watch the evolution.
I love this. Look at this massive undertaking get underway. We're going to see a lot more of this. While we're seeing this, I think it's also important to point out Elon's SpaceX IPO at $7.5 trillion is tied to data centers in space and a Mars colony of 1 million people.
Wow.
This is what's going to happen on Mars. But it's going to be robots. It's going to be humanoid robots that are developing these data centers.
Wow. Wait, you said SpaceX is going to IPO at 7.5 trillion?
Yes.
What? Who's buying that? Oh my gosh.
USVC, I think is the name of Naval's new fund.
Oh my God.
So whoever's buying
Retail's
that,
about to get absolutely cooked on.
yeah.
So bad. All right, guys, we got Johann Eid, the Chief Business Officer of Chainlink. If you are a Chainlink Marine watching, guys, send us a message. Let us know what you want to talk to Johann about. He's a friend of the show now, and will be a great segment following this, the state of affairs in DeFi, right? I mean, considering everything that's happened with the broader market and with KelpDAO, Rob,
Well, obviously,
and everything in between.
I mean, obviously, it's important to understand what decentralization really means when we have one-of-one DVNs, backing some of this infrastructure. And so I think, Chainlink, given they've got tentacles in several different facets, I'm curious how they're able to maintain decentralization but still scale at such an efficiency. But yeah, I think we're going to dig into decentralization in this regard, talk about security standards. Essentially, how do we protect DeFi from going through something like this in the future?
I agree, man. Let's do it. Let's bring Johann up and let's get the show on the road, ladies and gentlemen. Ladies and gentlemen, let's get this show on the road, Rob. Let's get this market bouncing back up, please. Please.
Yeah, we're not gonna expect Johann to do that, but I think ultimately we can help protect against a lot of these things.
Yeah, these rate limited, whitelisted, compliant DeFi futures that we're absolutely barreling towards.
And look, we want to maintain like censorship resistance, but have proper risk controls. So it's like,
Yeah, of course.
I don't want to be rate limited, right? If I'm trying to take these things out,
Don't
but
worry,
some
Rob.
things are obvious.
Don't worry, man. You're not going to get rate limited, buddy. You know, your 3 ETH bridge there is not going to get rate limited. You're going to be all right, man?
Oh my goodness. At least I'm on chain. This guy's got uranium off chain. Buy uranium on Tezos if you're going to buy uranium.
Don't worry, buddy. Your 4 ETH is not going to get
I made
rate
it
limited.
3 to 4
Let's
ETH.
get Johann up, all right, man. Let's have
Oh
some
my
fun with
goodness,
Johann.
let's go. There he
get
is.
serious. Johann, how are you, man? Good to see you.
Hey, I'm very good. Good to see you, folks.
Yes, I assume very busy as well in the last week to 10 days, given all that's happened.
Yeah, it's been 2 very busy, low sleep weeks, but we're used to it at this point. It's been it's been productive.
You know, we've heard Sergey. He likes to say, it's not 363 days that your infrastructure can work. It's the other 2 days where it really gets tested. That's where the men separate from the boys, if you will. We had an incident, a couple of weeks ago. Pieces are starting to get picked up now, thanks to Aave, putting together this DeFi United collective. But kind of take us through from the beginning, right? These things obviously weren't decentralized. That's how North Korea was able to spoof the RPCs and trick them into, ultimately collapsing. Take us through where some of these things fell short. What can we do to prevent this from ever happening again in the future?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, there is a long answer and there is a short answer, okay? The long answer, which I'll go over quickly.
We've got time.
I'll do my best, is this space a few years ago used to be all about security. So if you remember in 2019, everyone was talking about how decentralized is the system, how secure is the system. Every time I would go on a call with a DeFi protocol and I would have to discuss price feeds with them, they would ask me, how secure is it? How decentralized is it? And people actually cared about that stuff. I think the space stopped caring for some reason. I think one of the key reasons actually is we had for a long time less hacks and people stopped caring about security as much. So the narrative shifted from how decentralized is it to how cheap, how fast is the system. And you can look at that by just looking at the chains, all the L1s, all the VC investments we've seen in the recent years. They've all been around projects which offer fast, cheap transactions, for instance, for L1s, right? So I think all of these hacks need to be a wake-up call for the space to go back to our roots. Our roots are in crypto, a hack is catastrophic for 2 reasons. You cannot revert the hack. Every transaction is immutable. And we are a DeFi space, meaning everything is composable. If an asset has an issue, every single system that uses this asset gets affected by it, right? It's like a domino falling. So hacks in DeFi are catastrophic. We can't avoid security failures. Now, to go back to what's the root of this issue, I think you have 2 principles in security. One is security by default. The other one is configurable security. Let me expand on that. If you use a Chainlink product today, whether you're using price feeds or you're using cross-chain or you're using proof of reserve, anything, you have decentralization by default, meaning every single cross-chain, like every single bridge we launch, has a minimum of 16 node operators, independent node operators, security reviewed, distributed all over the world, all making money from running their nodes, meaning they're incentivized to run their nodes and provide a very high level of security. The other model is do-it-yourself security. The do-it-yourself security, which is the one that really was at the core of that, is the infra provider putting all the liability of the security on their users. What does this mean? It means every single smart contract developer now needs to become a security expert at bridges. They need to know how to compose a decentralized Oracle network. They need to have monitoring. They need to basically become a DevOps expert, right? When you use this type of model at scale, mess ups are gonna happen. Yeah. So I think the long story is we need to go back to our roots in terms of security. And as an infra provider in this space, my conviction is you need to offer default security. The system you offer needs to be secured by default. It shouldn't be up to the users, to the smart contract developers, to secure their own system. It's like you went to DeFi developers and you told them, run your own node in order to be on this blockchain. And if you mess up running the node, you know, the blockchain will go down. It makes no sense, right? That's not the standards we should be setting.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. When it comes to the actual kind of, what happened here, I think we can kind of understand and agree that there was some miscalculated risk parameterization setups. There was some miscalculated risk assessment across lending markets, across node signatures, across security parameters. Like there was just like some miscalculations at large. What do you think this really means, right? Because we been hearing that, oh, this is going to slow down the institutional flow. I think JP Morgan even came out and said, hey, this is going to slow down the institutional flow. From my perspective, I don't think it's going to slow down the institutional flow much. I think it's going to really cause a slightly uptick in distrust in the more retail side, right? I think that people on the retail side are probably a bit more concerned about where they're putting their money, what assets they're holding, what looping strategies they're doing, what smart contracts they're exposed to. But my take on the institutional side is that this is probably just going to make a much more of a narrow thought process from their side as to who they're working with, as to what they're allocating into. I actually think that this is not going to affect the adoption at all. I think it still continues to accelerate. How do you agree with that? How do you think about, let's say, put yourself in the shoes of one of these institutional allocators. How do you react to this? How do you respond to this? What would you anticipate is the kind of result of what's happened from that adoption perspective?
Yeah, it's a great question. Look, I have to tell you, for institutionals and TradFi, they were already looking at security very deeply every time they integrate a new blockchain system. So they're already doing audits, they're already reviewing the security of every single infra they use and of the security of the protocols where their tokenized assets also get used, right? So I actually don't think it's gonna slow them down too much because a lot of these folks have realized how much security does matter for a very long time. And actually from the Chainlink side, the folks who've been asking us the most about security have been TradFi institutions. And that's also why we've been so successful in this space. If you look at institutions today, we're probably the only provider on cross-chain and on oracles they actually work with. And the reason for that is that they have an extremely high bar in terms of security. And Chainlink was the only one that can fulfill this high bar, right? So I don't think it changes much for them. I think it changes for our space because our space, again, has not cared as much about security for a little while, or at least, many folks have cared. Aave has cared a ton about security, just to be clear. Aave has been one of the very few DeFi protocols in the last 7 years to go through, all the ups and downs of our space without any issues. But unfortunately, in general, I think retail, folks need to care more around the security and need to be asking more questions. So it needs to be a whole ecosystem-driven approach thing. I think that's where things are gonna slow down more, not on the TradFi side.
I agree, but you made a big claim there, right, with regards to kind of Chainlink and CCIP. Could you explain technically why this is not, could you just back up that claim? Why is this not possible on Chainlink? Your brain, when you see these things, think that it could happen to anyone, right? And, then you hear people come out and kind of say, no, this couldn't happen to us. Like, could you just back that up? What about CCIP, or what about what you guys have from the node architecture perspective, or just from the kind of broad technical setup would cause this to be effectively impossible?
Sure. So here in this setup, you had only one node that needed to be corrupted in order for the issue to happen, right? So that's what happened. You had one actor that needed to be corrupted, and then the whole hack happened, right? With Chainlink, the smallest network we have on CCIP is 16 nodes. And the 16 nodes are not ran by Chainlink. They're ran by different entities. Some of those are staking provider like Figment. Some of those are telco companies like Deutsche Telekom, Swisscom, etc. So you have a huge variety of node operators. You will need to hack at least, 11 of them to be able to create this issue, which just happened here. So it's 11x more expensive and harder to do, right? So yeah, I think that's one of the big claims why we can say we're decentralized by default and secure by default.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, and this was always the true spirit of what we were building here. I think even, we knew internally that one of one, whatever you want to call them, multi-sigs, verifier networks, whatever you want to call them, one of one doesn't work. The law is the power law such that, you have more economic nodes in the network. It becomes harder and harder to corrupt more of them. The entire system becomes more secure. Johann, I want to circle back to something that you said about kind of the way in which these hacks have progressed over the last few years. You mentioned, kind of leading up before 2026, we had less hacks. I remember we had one, massive Bybit hack. But other than that, it felt like on chain, things were relatively calm. Clearly, things weren't calm because we had figured it out, right? It feels like even back then, things were more rudimentary than they are now. And so what changed? Why did we have less hacks back then and more hacks now? What was it about the system back then that, we weren't getting hacked?
I think DeFi is way more complex. I think that's one key answer. So we have a lot more variables now. Cross-chain wasn't a thing only 2-3 years ago, right? So back then, the main issue when I started in this space was DeFi Oracle hacks, right? So actually back in the day in 2018 and 19, mainly, you had a lot of Oracle hacks. So basically the way teams ran Oracles was they were running their own Oracle, and it was also centralized, right? So if the Oracle was corrupted, all the money was gone directly, right? So you had multiple hacks like that. BZX Synthetics had a big issue like that back in the day, right? So that was solved through Chainlink, right? So today, 80% of the space is using our price feeds. We basically solved Oracle hacks. The next big thing which happened recently has been cross-chain complexity getting introduced. And if you look at the hacks with cross-chain, you've had the first hack in 2021 with Wormhole, which was, I believe, $300 million also. Yep. You've had Ronan, you've had Poly something. I'm not going to say the wrong name. I have two different Polys, so I don't want to blame the wrong one. But you've had $2 billion in cross-chain hacks, right? I think one of the key reasons, frankly, is a lot of the infra running these bridges is not decentralized. It's centralized, right? So the issue we solved with Oracles, Chainlink is still solving it on cross-chain. Our market share has been going up nonstop for the last few months. And, the way I like to think about it is every user we add to the cross-chain network for CCIP is a user we protect, basically. But there are still a lot of protocols that are not using Chainlink and are using centralized things. Like the next thing I'm seeing on Twitter now is if it's a 2 out of 2, it's secure. So I've seen this thing. Don't worry, guys. We moved also one of one to 2 out of 2.
Dude, I was shocked, man.
Yeah.
When these teams started announcing the pausing of their different OFTs and things, I was the amount of 2 of 2s. It was just like it was as bad as the amount of 1-on-1s.
I can tell you one thing. We were in a better spot in terms of security knowledge across the space in 2019. than we are today. Because in 2019, if you came out and you said, I'm securing billions of dollars through 2 out of 2, you would get killed.
Yeah.
Honestly,
Yeah.
like, so I'm quite sad to see that. It does motivate me and the team to work way harder to let people know 2 out of 2 is not okay. 3 out of 3 is not okay either, by the way. You need more. You need more. And the more you add, the more exponential the cost becomes to hack you. But we do need to be doing this work, because really it's sad to see how people misunderstand security today in our space.
Yeah, but I think it's also, as you were saying, now there's this kind of cross-chain complexity added. But what that enabled was like effectively the next iteration of this DeFi Lego composability, right? We got this very intricate protocol layering across chains as well that was like very favorable from a user perspective as far as earning yield, farming points, doing different types of kind of campaign structures. How do you think about kind of like the double-edged sword here for the composability argument, and as it pertains specifically to how protocols should be thinking about the types of collateral assets, the types of assets that they're using in their protocol? How do you kind of think about this kind of two-sided sword here, and what that kind of risk mental framework will probably look like going forward?
I think there are 2 parts. One is risk mitigation. The second one is threat mitigation. So let me start with the first one. With risk mitigation, I think a lot of the risk managers, curators need, and we're working with many of them on this, by the way. So they're extremely smart at financial engineering. How do I ensure an asset is fully backed? How do I ensure the liquidity, the volume of the asset, etc. What they have, what a lot of them are working on now is, how do I assess off-chain risk, cross-chain risk, Oracle risk, etc. So that's one thing we're working with a lot of them on. With Lamarisk, for instance, we're releasing risk oracles with them, and we're working on a lot of cross-chain stuff today with them to make sure this like the curation gets better and better on all the stuff they secure. We're doing the same work with curators on things like Morpho, right? So I think the risk management has to be upgraded, and that's happening quickly to take into account things like cross-chain, etc. The second thing is we need more circuit breakers. We need more rate limiting in the space. We need ways to, there is a word for that. I'm sorry, it's a bit late here. My English gets worse and worse throughout the day.
Yeah, after a couple glasses of wine. Don't worry, man. I feel you.
How to stop the contagion of a toxic asset, basically. So as soon as you have an asset that becomes toxic, how do you cut it? How do you ensure it doesn't go throughout the system and break everything? And that's what you do with circuit breakers, with rate limiting, right? So I think that has to be implemented more across the space. We have rate limiting on CCIP by default. That's one thing we've enabled for our users to have. I think we probably want to start having more circuit breakers on the DeFi side also in the future.
And Johann, how do we? This is kind of a maybe a second part to the same question. Composability is one of the primary benefits of DeFi. We can layer these things on, but we want to layer the reward. We don't want to layer the risk. Cross-chain helps us do that. Another big value proposition of the space as a whole is censorship resistance. Once we start thinking about circuit breakers, risk controls, and slowing down, freezing, stopping certain parts of the system, obviously if we can do that and we don't have any false positives, right? We, always stop the toxic behavior, but we don't prevent any normal behavior. That's ideal. How do we balance the value propositions of censorship resistance, composability with proper risk controls, and so that we don't get in the way of some of the key value propositions that DeFi is here to serve?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, composability is something it's a killer use case of our space, but it needs to be good composability. You shouldn't mix bad with good, for instance. Otherwise, let me give you an example, right? The subprime crisis was a big part mixing bad loans with good loans, all right? That wasn't good composability, that was toxic composability. Right. So in the same way, you do want to limit that type of stuff. I think risk management will allow us to have the good kind of composability you want, meaning good assets interacting with other good assets, right? Secure assets interacting with other secure assets. And the second one is, if you look at freezing assets, for instance, look at USDT. USDT is hyper useful. Everyone uses USDT in DeFi. Everyone uses it for transactions. They are able to freeze transactions, right? It hasn't prevented anyone from using them. It's still as useful for the average DeFi user. So I don't think being able to freeze assets, being able to have circuit breakers is contrary to having composable DeFi. I think it actually improves it because it makes good assets even better by being able to leverage them more and by being able to protect them more by not mixing them with bad assets, you see?
Yeah. I think we had a question here from one of our lovely audience members about the trade-off about the Chainlink node architecture with 16 nodes. What is the trade-off with speed from something like a 1 of 1 or a 2 to 2 as you add more nodes? If you need 11 of 16 signatures, do you limit speed? Really, you're looking to solve for speed and security. How do you think about this trade-off?
Yeah, that's a great question. By the way, we have 16 as a minimum. We have many chains where we have way more. Just an aside here. So speed is actually not a concern here. The most limiting factor on cross-chain is chain finality, meaning you don't want to have the cross-chain transaction go through before you have finality on the source chain. Otherwise, you could get a reorg, which allows a hacker to steal money. A good example, actually, there was a reorg, I think, 2 days ago on Litecoin, which, in this exact scenario, if there was a cross-chain protocol using Litecoin without waiting for finality, this reorg could have stolen a lot of money, right? So it's not a limiting factor on speeds. It can be a limiting factor on costs, but also, frankly, the costs are very comparable to what you have on other cross-chain systems that are way more centralized than CCIP, right? Yeah. And the good thing with CCIP, which no one talks about, is the node operators need to make money, all right? Like they need to be incentivized to run a security business. So for us, the node operators we have on the Chainlink network, many of them, they make 70% of their business revenue through Chainlink. They care about Chainlink a ton. So they're able to have OPSEC people and DevOps people working on security, 24/7, basically. Like if they have an alert at 3 a.m., they will wake up, right? They need to care. A lot of these cross-chain systems out there, if they're decentralized, which is a big if, because I actually don't know if any of them is decentralized. Most of them are, running all the nodes with the project itself running the nodes. But if they're decentralized, the node operators are not even making any money, which means they don't care about running the node, right? Would you put 5 people on a node operation if you're making 3K on that thing a whole month, in fact, for a month? Of course not, right? It doesn't pay the bills. So that's another key thing to take into account. And that's why the cost can be higher sometimes, because you do need to pay for the node operations to pay for the security.
Got it.
Got you. Okay. And then when it comes to some of the actual certifications, right? So Chainlink's got this SOC2 type 2 for CCIP and for data feeds, as well as the only Oracle with SOC2 type 2 and type 1, plus ISO 27001. What does this mean for the industry? Is this a stamp of approval that other cross-chain protocols and oracles are going to be required to also obtain? Is it something that the institutional side comes in very handy from risk management and understanding of what kind of team that they're working with? Is it something that looks good on paper? Like, how do you describe the importance of these certifications? And perhaps do you anticipate this kind of trend towards auditability certifications as a meaningful stepping stone for the industry?
Yeah, I think it's pretty critical. It does take a long time to get this stuff. It takes 1 to 2 years and a lot of efforts. Look, it's a requirement on the traditional finance side, right? So they do care about security, they do care about auditability. I think at some point the space has to go beyond trust me, bro, in terms of security. And I think these certificates are really critical in that regard. So yeah, super important. And I think it's, it just solidifies why we're working with so many of these traditional finance players. It's because we do fulfill their security requirements.
Yeah. And, as this industry is progressing, we've gone through multiple iterations. We kind of started out, it was all about, how are you securing your private keys if you're a multi-sig, and the things have kind of progressed since there. Now we're getting into the security guarantees of the node architecture. I remember Andy and I had multiple conversations as we were digging into blockchain architecture about economic security, about cryptographic security, and how, it felt like ZK was going to be the saving grace because people were unfamiliar with economic security and how, you can just kind of, if you have enough money, you can exploit the network. But if you have cryptographic guarantees, then these things are much, much more secure. How important are the differences between like an economic security guarantee versus a cryptographic one? And ultimately, are there still steps that we can take? Is it just about adding more nodes to the system? Or are there scientific, cryptographic steps that we can take to further secure these systems?
Look, the pillar of security in this space is really more nodes and more decentralization, right? And that's how Bitcoin works, and that's how Ethereum works. It's economic incentives and decentralization. I think that's enough if you do it right. Cryptographic security with things like ZK, for cross-chain, it doesn't scale that much because you need a new circuit for every chain you integrate. So basically, if you wanted the ZK bridge, adding one chain every time would take months to years, depending on how difficult the chain is. And keep in mind, with non-EVMs, the difficulty goes way beyond, right? So look, from my point of view, the proved points for our space are decentralization and economics that make sense to incentivize node operators to behave well and to care about their security, right? And from there, obviously, we're always researching more redundancy, more security. How do you add more nodes? One of the key features we'll have with our new CCIP release will be the ability for token issuers to run their own node as another add-on on top of our current security, right? So the core should always be decentralization and token economics that make sense. And on top of that, you can add more and more, but you need the core foundation. And to me, that core foundation is the best one.
And how much are, the institutions that are tokenizing these assets and looking to deploy on chain, how much are they looking at, some of the certifications that we talked about earlier, the SOC 2, the ISO, versus, the node architecture? Are they looking at one and not the other? Are they looking at the entire thing? What is most important from a security standard to the financial institutions with trillions of assets looking to access the on-chain financial ecosystem?
Yeah, that's a great question. Look, they're looking at both. The system needs to be end-to-end resilient. You're only as weak as your weakest part. That's famous saying in the security community, and that's very, very true in DeFi, by the way, where everything is connected. You're only as weak as your weakest asset, basically. So that's the way TradFi looks at our space. They look at the whole security end-to-end, and frankly, that's the way anyone who's serious about security should do it.
Yeah. Johann, I'm curious about this kind of next release that you talk about with CCIP. What is driving this release that you feel is a necessary technical upgrade than what currently exists? What are the key upgrades here that solve an unfinished problem in the current version?
We'll be discussing more on it.
Okay.
I would say it's more adapting to the complexity of our space, meaning our space has more and more chains, more and more requirements. Now that TradFi is entering the space, things are, new requirements are coming in that are different from DeFi. So
sure.
yeah, it's really resolving the problems of tomorrow way more than resolving the problem of today, if you want.
Yeah.
Got it.
And I think I might have asked you this when we were in Cannes, and I asked you about kind of where the Chainlink brand may sit in 5 years. But I'm curious where you think the DeFi ecosystem sits in 5 years, given this kind of growth of rate limits, growth of compliant DeFi. Where do you see the broader DeFi landscape sitting in 5 years or so as a result of what we've kind of seen? What is kind of that vision here? And then we'll close this out here.
I think you'll have two DeFi spaces. I do think you'll need to have one space that's very adapted to tokenized assets, meaning on par with their security requirements, meaning rate limiting, meaning ability to freeze asset, meaning ability to have KYC AML, know your counterparty, etc. And probably you'll have another DeFi space, which is way more, Wild West, like the one we have today, and probably like the one we had way before in 2019 also. But really, that's the beauty of our space, by the way. The beauty of our space is you have options. You have the option to go full TradFi, full institutional, KYC, AML, risk limiting, etc. And you have the ability to build whatever you want, and no one can limit you or tell you what to do, right? So that's what I think the future will look like.
Last thing from me, Johann, actually from LinkToad, General H. Bari himself, one of the lovely community members. Can you give us any light into the monetization structure for prediction markets, fees on volume, ?
We're working on that with our partners. Look, the way we work with many of these folks is we go after the market, and monetization is being worked on in parallel, right? So right now, if you look at prediction markets, we are getting adopted by, a huge chunk of the space. We'll be divulging more kind of info, just like we did with derivative dexes, for instance, if you go back to the way we worked with GMX back in the day with RevShare, etc. So the infos will come as we progress in our adoption efforts.
Last one from my side, Johann. On the Kelp DAO incident, and I realize Chainlink is a large organization. You speak for yourself, may not, represent the opinions of the organization as a whole, but Arbitrum DAO, was able to essentially rescue 30,000 ETH. They did this by, leveraging their single sequencer. Their security council chose to recoup these funds. Do you think this was the right decision, kind of factoring in what we know about decentralization? You've been here for a long time, what the spirit of the industry is, but also recognizing, what's at stake. Do you think Arbitrum DAO, made the right decision, and why?
I mean, absolutely. I think the why speaks for itself, right? Like they basically took back North Korea money. So, less... Okay, I won't make a joke here, but less funding bombs to whatever they're investing in over there.
Right.
Look, I think, frankly, that's another beauty of this space. Mm-hmm. I think they did the right choice. For all the people who think they didn't do the right choice, go use another chain. Like, that's you have the option. That's why blockchain is so good. Yeah. Because you have the option to do whatever you want. So for the people who don't agree, take your money somewhere else. Up to you.
Yeah, it's a free market, permissionless. Johann,
Exactly.
Thanks so much for joining us today. Absolute pleasure. You've obviously got a vantage point on so many things going on in the space because Chainlink is so plugged in, overall in the space. And then obviously great insight on the Kelp DAO incident and the resolution efforts from Aave. Appreciate you coming on the show and spending some time with us.
Thank you. It's great to see you guys. Thank you. Have a great day.
Busy times, man. Well, let's get back to it. All
Very
right.
busy.
All right, buddy.
See you, Johann.
All righty. That is Kelp DAO. It is hopefully getting resolved as of this week. I mean, it seems like Aave is going to put it together, get their, get this reserve strategy dialed, and it's seemingly looking like there is a very technical and material process to kind of finalize what's been done. I think the Chainlink team has quite a bit to do on managing the liquidation side of things, just making sure that that goes smooth from the way that Aave is planning to unwind this. I think we'll hear more from Aave in the coming days specifically about that. So, yeah, we have a couple things that we did not get to go through that I think we ought to. I think one of them is actually CCIP related, if I'm not mistaken. We ended there on the Galaxy Digital pivot to the AI warehouse from the Bitcoin mining facility. And I think the next one is actually what we just talked about with Chainlink. So Chainlink promotes CCIP as a cross-chain standard. And we just had Johann on about that. Now we'll talk about this US strategic Bitcoin reserve, which I am hard fading.
Yeah, you call this a nothing burger.
I don't think it even happened. So let's I didn't listen.
Let's get to the video.
To the full clip. And our friend Sam K here is in this suit with Patrick Witt
right next to
in
Patrick
Vegas.
Witt. Yeah, let's play the video because I'm curious how this has been developing.
Yeah, let's hear it.
Overall, the president signed the Strategic Bitcoin Reserve Executive Order last year, and we've gone to work in figuring out exactly the machinations necessary and legal interpretations that we need to get that right and solidify that and protect the digital assets, but specifically Bitcoin that we have on the government balance sheet. So in the next few weeks, we'll be making a big announcement. I think we have a bit of a breakthrough there. And obviously that needs to be followed up with legislation. Senator Lummis's Bitcoin Act over in the House. Representative Begich has talked about the ARMA Act that he has put together. So we need to codify it. But in the meantime, we do believe we're going to be able to take a big step forward from the executive branch side in the next few weeks.
That's huge news. So on.
Overall, the president signed the Strategic Bitcoin Reserve Executive Order last year, and we've gone to work in figuring out exactly the machinations necessary and legal interpretations.
It feels like a lot of these things are always
to get that right and solidify that and protect.
I think you're probably accurate with your nothing burger point there. But he is saying, look, there was multiple obstacles to getting this done. He's describing a breakthrough. It feels like they're going to announce something. What kind of effect that has still remains to be seen. But Strategic Bitcoin Reserve, if anything, it feels bullish because they get off zero, right? If it's some sort of reserve, if it's not just, hey, we're going to confiscate this Bitcoin and we're going to put it into a stockpile and we're not going to sell it. That's great. You're not selling it. But if they're buying net new Bitcoin on the market, OTC, buying it from somewhere, they get off zero that way. And they lay out some sort of plan as to how they could continue to accrue more. We'll see. Then
Enrique says, they need to leave that Bitcoin fund alone and just get clarity to the finish line. I agree. I'm ready to just see clarity get done. I mean, we've stopped talking about it on the show because we're just tired of it. And so I don't know. I don't think this is going to be anything that big. I don't think it's going to end up being, huge, but yet to be seen. Rob, I'm going to get our next guest set up on board, pass it to you, and then you'll pass it back to me. I'll see you in a second, buddy.
Yeah, see you soon. Remains to be seen. We'll see about the strategic Bitcoin reserve there. If they make an announcement, they get off zero, I could see it making some waves. It really depends on how much they're going to be allocating. Our friends at Chainlink, you just heard from Johann. Let's see what they've got coming out of CCIP. Let's play the clip. Let's see. Chainlink.
We are long past the experimental phase of cross-chain. Billions in value, institutional capital, real-world assets, all moving between chains every day. So the question isn't whether cross-chain works. It's what happens when it doesn't. When everything depends on a single point of failure, and it fails. Chainlink was built on a different standard. Decentralized networks, independent node operators, built-in circuit breakers. A system designed for when 99% is not enough. Because your assets deserve more than hope and promises, and a single point of failure is one too many. Chainlink CCIP, trillions in value enabled, secure and uncompromised,
Yeah, there you have
decentralized.
it. And so,
by default.
obviously, Chainlink is looking at this as an opportunity, which they should be. Layer Zero chose one of one DVNs in production. Chainlink is saying, look, built-in circuit breakers, independent node operators, decentralization by default. Ultimately, this is the way that it should be. And so, there's going to be some fallout, I think, from Layer Zero. I believe I was on the show a few days ago. We were talking about Kelp DAO and how, right now you're starting to see some of these bridges come back online. A lot of those one-of-one OFTs, a lot of those DFNs, they got the DVNs, excuse me. Those DVNs got paused, right? Anyone with a one-of-one or two of two was paused over the last couple of weeks. Those are starting to get turned back on. But I believe a lot of backdoor conversations are happening now where, these guys are going to turn this on begrudgingly in order to, kind of open for business. But these guys don't want to rely on one-of-one DVN architecture anymore. Maybe the initial step is, hey, we're going to upgrade to something more secure from Layer Zero. But I'd imagine there's several conversations about moving off of Layer Zero altogether. And so here you have Chainlink CCIP, which is essentially an alternative that could serve a lot of that market that is looking to move from their DVN network structure into something that CCIP offers. And you heard about the value proposition, when 99% isn't enough. You don't want your protocol's TVL to look like the life of a turkey, right? 99 days and then zero. Ultimately, you need security and protection all the time. And so that's what Chainlink and CCIP are given. I see Andy still getting set up behind the scenes with our guest. The guy's coming in hot with a suit on, guys. Believe they're going to be chatting 21Shares. Lots to go over there. Let's see what we've got up next on our news segment. We'll move off of Chainlink here. We'll get the next piece of information here. Okay, I think that was a bit. That was the last of it. But obviously, there's quite a bit happening out there. We talked about Elon's SpaceX package, talked about the UAE, brought you guys exactly what you needed here. So we're just going to take a quick standby break. Don't go anywhere. And we'll be right back with, let's see, Eric Burchill, I believe. Eric Burchill of 21Shares. I believe is who we're coming at you guys with today. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back, and we'll see you guys soon with Andy and Eric live from the Nest, the tokenization tower, in just a bit. We'll see you soon.
Alrighty, guys, we are live here in the Tokenization Tower, presented by our friends at Plume. Let's give them some love, man. We've got Adrian J. Fitz. Good to see you. Welcome to the tower, Adrian, the Chief Investment Officer at 21Shares. Adrian, good to see you in the city, man. How's the city treating you?
Man, it's been amazing. Weather's fantastic. I'm having a great time. And thanks for having me as well.
Of course, first time here in the Empire State Building, so it's good to have you.
I just took some photos of the view, being a little tourist, but yeah, it's a stunning office. You can be lucky.
Thank you, man. Thank you, man. Well, hey, it is an interesting time in the industry right now. That is for sure. We're gonna talk high level on the markets, kind of how you're thinking about this, how your firm is thinking about this. Before we do, Adrian, you've got an interesting background prior to joining 21Shares. Maybe you just kind of tell us a bit about your foray into being a portfolio manager and an investor, and kind of how that all came about.
How I ended up in crypto, basically.
Sure.
I mean, yeah, my background is more traditional, I would say. So I worked in merger and acquisitions, like in investment banking, management consulting, but also corporate M&A. But always been close to markets and always had, a massive passion for investing, specifically crypto, because it's always been the most fascinating one. For me, it's kind of like the perfect combination of real technology and finance and investing. And therefore, I actually bumped into crypto 2013 because of a colleague from university. And back then, I thought there could be an amazing investment pitch. I actually asked my stepdad for some money. It took a while until he finally wired me $1,000. I invested, and 2 weeks later, the market dropped like 70, 80%. So, and I sold at the bottom. Yeah. But I was hooked. Yeah. I was hooked on Bitcoin, kind of lost interest. But then 2016, when Ethereum came up, I was back into crypto. Yeah. Back then, did it more out from kind of like passion, aside from my corporate job. But then 5 years ago, I thought it was the perfect opportunity to make it, a full-time job, pay my bills.
There you go.
And that's how I joined 21Shares.
Amazing.
And ever since, been a wild ride.
Great, man. We just had Cathie Wood on the show, and we were talking about kind of how her and her firm at ARK Invest is thinking about this space. And she laid out this kind of big four asset thesis, which is obviously Bitcoin, Ethereum, Solana, and then she put in Hyperliquid in there. And she kind of spoke about these being her kind of big three plus maybe Hyperliquid, and that with her ETFs, her firm, this was kind of how they were thinking about the space currently as far as like investable DeFi platforms is kind of what she called them. When we're thinking about this space holistically, we've kind of started to get sectors, in this space, right? You've kind of got this Bitcoin as this digital gold and everything else thesis, or you've got Bitcoin, smart contract platforms, and everything else at the institutional level. In the dealings with institutional allocators, with higher net worth clients, what are they truly looking for from exposure to digital assets? Is it just a little bit of extra beta on their portfolio? Is there, just like generally curious, your spectrum of interactions with institutions, high net worths who are coming into the space, and just kind of what they think, what the education is required? Just kind of give us a bit of a sense of like what that looks like.
There's a lot to unpack, I would say, yeah. So first of all, I think I would agree with Cathie Wood. I think we're very much aligned on that point. And it comes down, it's the first step is the classification. I think there's still a bit of a misconception. They see crypto assets as kind of like one asset. But of course, there are different sectors, different value propositions, and even just the nature of the projects are widely different. And that's where the education starts. And I think you laid it out perfectly. We always position Bitcoin as kind of like the monetary anchor of the entire asset class. So of course it acts more as a digital commodity, a digital gold. Then Ethereum, Solana really act as those platforms for innovation, really the base layer for a lot of things that build on top of it. And then you have all the structural trends, all the innovation, decentralized finance, stable coins, tokenization, that build on top of the innovation layer, how we like to call it, all the different applications, all the different projects. When we speak to traditional investors, that's kind of the first thing they need to understand, that those are different assets, different value propositions. What they always want is they want to see how to value crypto assets. And of course, you got to start with Bitcoin, but Bitcoin is the most challenging one because it doesn't generate any yields. And therefore, to put like a traditional valuation framework on top of it is quite challenging. However, the story of Bitcoin, kind of like this narrative of a scarce asset, is much easier to tell.
Right.
Ethereum, Solana, or something like Hyperliquid, those are actually really compelling cases once they start to understand it, because once again, you have the staking yield, and this could act, all the transaction fees that are being accrued, they act as some sort of cash flow, and then it becomes much more of a, valuation that you can put on top of it.
Right.
And that's what they like to hear.
So Cathie also came in and said her firm's base case for Bitcoin by 2030 is 730,000, and her bull case is 1.5 million.
That's ballsy. That's a bold claim. I mean, we can talk about timing, but I think in the long run, I would agree with that price target.
Yeah.
If it's going to be in 2030 or 2035 or 2040, remains to be seen. But I think what she actually want to get to is just the long-term investment case for Bitcoin. And it does take a bit more patience, because it is about monetary debasement, the devaluation of fiat currency. And this is not going to happen overnight, but eventually it will materialize. Yeah.
And recently, I don't know if you've seen the Etherealize team put out this productive money thesis for Ethereum. And they were actually saying that Ethereum might go to 250,000 based on the backing of this productive money thesis. And you're smiling here. I'm not sure how much ETH you hold. I found that to be very aggressive and very, very obviously long-term thinking, with this idea of this asset that has a different consensus mechanism than Bitcoin, and potentially a longer-term solution to the security problem that is superior to Bitcoin. Do you guys care much about the dynamics of the consensus designs, the security dilemmas between a proof of work network, a proof of stake network? Do you guys think like more about kind of how Bitcoin may solve its problem of being not valued high enough to be worth mining, thus a large drop in hash rate, a large drop in mining pools, thus a much less secure network? Like, do you guys apply this framework of thought to also reach any sort of similar conclusions with regards to ETH being potentially a better investment long-term than Bitcoin? Or do you find these types of takes to be very kind of like small-minded and kind of narrow, rather than just understanding that all of the institutional flow is really coming to Bitcoin and that Ethereum's just kind of gaining that ground?
That's a tough one. You're putting me on the spot. I mean, it sounds like I have to choose a camp. 200K?
250, man.
250. That's so aggressive. That's so aggressive. I thought Tom Lee is already like at the highest in regards to ETH price predictions, but 250K is... I mean, what would the market cap look like? I mean, out of this
50 trillion or so.
50 trillion. Okay. Yeah. I think it might take a while. I understand where they're coming from. Of course, you have kind of it being, as you said, productive money, but it also has some sort of store of value attributes, because in regards to smart contract platforms, it is the most decentralized. So you could make that case. Is it going to rival Bitcoin? It's hard to quantify that. I think it comes down to more of a philosophical question. I love all crypto assets, but nonetheless, always Bitcoin first. And I don't think Ethereum will flip Bitcoin anytime soon. When it comes to the research itself, of course, we take that into account as well. I mean, we talk to traditional investors. Usually we don't have to go that deep into the technicals. Of course, we try and explain the difference between proof of work, proof of stake, what it means in regards to decentralization, security. What they actually care about is just the yield, the staking yield. Okay. That's what they're most interested in. But usually those conversations are very high level, and that's something that, we from the research team look into internally. And also kind of have fun conversations just like this.
Yeah. on a similar train of thought, then is this quantum subject something that
absolutely
larger institutional allocators or high net worths are asking you guys about? Like, hey, I want to allocate a couple $1,000,000 to Bitcoin, but I'm hearing about this quantum issue. Like, is this something that I should pay attention to? I guess like what I'm trying to get at is people are saying that there's a bit of a narrative headwind here on the quantum side when it comes to it being prohibitive for these larger allocators. It's getting in their way. How accurate is that? Is it something that they're really concerned about?
It comes up quite a bit, I would say.
Okay.
I don't know if it kind of stops them from allocating, but the question, it pops up quite often, especially in this bear market, which is kind of a bear market phenomenon. Of course, narratives like this, they usually are a bit more aggressive and fueled during bad price performance.
Sure.
But nonetheless, they always ask about quantum computing. And I think we should take it seriously. And I think the crypto community does take it seriously as well. I mean, we've seen a lot of proposals and conversations within the Bitcoin developer community with BIP 360 and 361. Agree or don't agree, I'm just happy that something's going on and the discussions are starting. And the same for Ethereum and Solana. This needs to be tackled in the long run, but we don't see it as an immediate risk. You met Eli, our global head of research as well. Our team, they did kind of like also a very deep dive research report that we're gonna release shortly, where we kind of interviewed a bunch of different experts from the field just to understand and grasp how imminent and how big of a threat it is.
Sure.
I think the takeaway is though, yes, we need to take it seriously, but it's not gonna happen overnight.
Sure. Yeah. So it was quite funny actually when the kind of 4-year cycle timing was happening in October-ish last year, September. A lot of larger, people call them suits, people call them institutional allocators, were saying that it was dead. In hindsight, it looks like the 4-year cycle is on. You guys put a 2026 kind of outlook and report out stating that, looking at ETF flows, one could infer that this typical kind of classical expectation that a lot of the investors in the space have kind of come to either grow, to hate, or to love, or to both, is likely not going to play out. And I think the way to think about it properly is that it's just going to be accelerated slightly. I think people right now think it's going to be accelerated drastically, such that we go to new highs, like directly from here, for example, by summer, fall. But the way I'm more so thinking about it is that it's going to be accelerated by a matter of 100 days or so, or a quarter or a quarter and a half, which by those numbers would put us around new all-time highs sometime middle of next year, sometime around June or July of 2027, bottoming sometime sooner than Q4, more like end of Q2, early Q3, that in the next couple months. But no one has a consensus around this right now. That's what makes a market.
Yeah.
I'm curious, are you still standing by your take that the cycle is broken? And maybe you could just illuminate how nuanced you guys are in thinking about that.
I would say it is nuanced, but in regards to that prediction, I would give us a 5 out of 10.
Okay.
Because just looking at price action, it perfectly matches the 4-year cycle. It's almost unbelievable.
It's a simulation, isn't it?
It's a simulation. No matter if you have institutional adoptions, big asset manager, the price action looks the same. Which is crazy. I think where we are right, and that's kind of like where the nuances kick in, is of course the market structure is different, and that structural demand from the institutional side is something we haven't seen before. So I would totally agree with you. The cycle still needs to play out to perfectly match it. But of course, just comparing it to the previous cycles, a lot has changed as well. And this could kind of imply that we might see a different scenario in the future.
Yeah, for example, stablecoin supply has made new all-time highs, which has never happened in any previous bear market.
Absolutely. And just the same with the ETF flows, because they are very constructive, actually.
Yeah.
I mean, despite prices being down 50%, in the US. I mean, ETF Bitcoin holdings, so they were only down like 5%.
Yeah.
So it clearly shows that some of those traditional investors, they're much more patient, and they hold through this volatility right now. And in Europe, even more striking, since the all-time high in October, we actually seen almost $1 billion in net new assets. So we see continuous new flows coming in. And that shows a bit that they starting to behave a bit more anti-cyclical, which is quite good.
Yeah, and then on the Europe versus the US versus Asian front, I'm curious how you're thinking about the regulatory climate as it affects the demand to invest. Obviously, I mean, we've made a rule on the show. We're just not talking about the Clarity Act anymore.
Oh, that's good.
Until it's passed, we just I mean it's just
I think it's overblown anyways. I think it's really important in the long run, but I don't see it as that massive catalyst that will bring us out of the bear market. But let's close that topic.
On the European side, then, what are the more important innovative regulation proceedings and developments that have been happening? Is there anything that you're particularly privy to, or that kind of your European client set are paying attention to as potentially kind of like a green light to invest? Or is it in a similar spot? Is it in a different spot than the States? How do these two continents kind of
Yeah, of course, in Europe, we kind of had the markets and crypto asset legislation, MiCA, which kind of puts a regulatory framework around crypto assets in the EU. And it's being implemented right now. The good thing is, from the 21Shares side, it doesn't really change much for us. Of course, it legitimizes the underlying asset class, but ETPs in Europe, they have been around for almost 8 years now, since 2018. So the regulatory clarity in regards to those traditional vehicles has been quite clear. I think what stands out is maybe the UK, because in the UK for a long time we had a ban on retail, and that has been lifted end of last year. So the FCA actually lifted a retail ban, which is good to see. And I think it comes with a bit of pressure to the banks, because they've seen that a lot of potential client money actually flows out to, crypto exchanges. And of course, they want to make sure to internalize all of that money. And therefore, the FCA finally got more comfortable and lifted the FCA, the retail ban. And therefore, we also have ETNs listed there. I think other than that, in terms of regulatory, what's maybe interesting is usage.
Sure.
Because, for instance, in Europe, you don't have crypto ETFs. You don't have a Bitcoin ETF, because in the EU, the ETFs, they're under usage regulation. And what that means basically is, to have an ETF, you need to fulfill a certain amount of diversification criteria. And of course, that's not possible on a single asset. That's why you also don't have gold ETFs in Europe. They're also called ETCs or ETPs. And it's the same for Bitcoin. Nonetheless, within some of those usage funds, you can now have kind of like those bigger diversified funds. You can now have up to 20% crypto allocation as well. So we see more crypto flowing into those more traditional vehicles as well, which is quite good. And that obviously unlocks a lot of potential institutional flows.
And are you seeing more activity and interest on the passive ETP or ETCCC or ETF side? Like what's the split in passive versus active products? Because in the traditional world, active products were very popular, but struggled from a fees perspective, being quite prohibitively high. And we're just now seeing some inception of more actively managed crypto ETFs, at least here in the States. What's the kind of spread between passive and active products? And do you kind of have any take on how this, market share changes in the coming year or two?
That's a very good question. Active ETFs, I would say they're taking off just recently, right? Over the last couple of years, you see JP Morgan, PIMCO, all coming out with their actively managed ETFs, and they're gaining much more traction.
Yeah.
In Europe, it's quite interesting. I would say the majority, almost everything, is still in passive vehicles. You do have so-called AMCs, actively managed certificates, but they never gained much traction. So if you look at the landscape, almost everything is still in passive ETFs or ETPs.
And would you expect that to continue then?
Potentially. What's also interesting, the first product we actually launched was a basket. So it was the top 5 crypto assets by market cap. Because we always thought investors, they might want to get diversified exposure. But it's actually not been the case. Until now, traditional investors, they want to pick single trackers. They want to pick single assets, which is quite fascinating. That might change in the future, but for now they're clearly on picking their own bets. When it comes to active, I think eventually it will come through, and we will see more actively managed ETFs, and they will be more successful as well.
Yeah, because I think like investors want to kind of turn their brain off and allow a manager to allocate to a basket of assets, based on the, whether it's a risk on or risk off type of market. You can think to allocate to, if you're just thinking about like the big 3 or big 4, you can think about, allocating in a different fashion based on the market condition. But I can understand that, look, I just want to own Bitcoin or I just want to own ETH and, that's it.
I think once they get a bit more comfortable, I'm pretty sure they're going to pick some actively managed ETFs as well. But I think for now, they're still at step 1. But it will come. It was the same with hedge funds. It took a while until that took off, but eventually people wanna bet on people's performance.
Sure. Yeah, and the reason that I ask about some of the regulatory side in Europe and in the States, and just kind of how you're thinking about it, is we've recently seen in DeFi specifically on chain quite a bit of like attacks and exploits and just kind of really insane situations unfolding. And JP Morgan came out, ironically, like a couple days after this recent Kelp DAO exploit and said, look, this is slowing the institutional adoption of crypto. But my current way of thinking is I don't think it's really slowing the institutional adoption of crypto. These guys are coming in, allocating to ETFs, tokenizing their kind of non-speculative assets, anything from T-bills to funds, etc. And they're bringing it on chain and they're launching ETFs. I found that it was, and I've kind of thought it's more of the retail people that are kind of becoming much more disoriented with the state of this DeFi ecosystem that they've come to know and love. And so I just wanted to ask, like, have you been fielding questions about that as of late in the past couple of weeks? Like, hey, I saw this exploit, or hey, I saw this hack. Like, what happened? Should I be worried? Should I pull my money out? What's kind of the state of that?
I mean, we didn't get too many questions. Of course, we were prepared internally, kind of like providing sales notes and everything, just to make sure if the question arises that we can answer them. But from the traditional side, I wouldn't say they weren't concerned, but maybe they didn't even know that hack happened.
That's kind of what I thought too.
Yeah. Like, it's really like that.
Yeah.
But I agree with you. I mean, it's of course it's unfortunate with the recent hacks. And even on my side, when was the last time you used DeFi?
I mean, I use it all the time to like send our team payroll and to like, field customer, client payments, all sorts of stuff. But like, using DeFi all the time, it's been, it's progressed slowly downwards over years.
Especially compared to the old crazy times, I would say,
course.
Where you was just
Were you around then?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I was around during the Wonderland and Ohm times. It was fun. It was definitely fun. But I think those times are over.
Sure.
And by the end of the day, I look at the bright side of things. It kind of it exposes the vulnerabilities of those projects as well, in my opinion, and make them more robust in the long run.
Okay.
And if you want to become a bit more institutional ready, I think that's the right way to go. Yeah. But it's just interesting to see that some of those, even the the communication around DeFi. Some of them go from decentralized finance to like on-chain finance and stuff like that. But I think what DeFi really shows is just how capital efficient those protocols can be. And I think that's where, traditional asset managers look very, very closely and see how they can use some of those concepts to integrate it into their operating model.
Yeah.
Just like a Hyperliquid, for instance, I think I do think it's the best example.
Yeah. So zooming out from like the internal ecosystem on a more of a macro view here, folks are a little bit concerned with the lack of performance from the crypto market off the lows. Stocks going to all-time highs.
Yeah.
This AI trade, this AI bottleneck trade, anything that is a part of this AI supply chain getting absolutely repriced extremely high, extremely fast. Honestly, the entire global stock market looks and feels like a 2017 Bittrex chart. It's insane, right?
Yeah,
and so from the macro perspective, thinking about the SpaceX IPO, this OpenAI IPO, this Anthropic IPO, these large scale liquidity events coming to the global market, how are you thinking about the duration of this AI trade right now? And thinking about like these big events this year, people are saying that the stock market can't handle it. People are saying that it can, and these are going to be huge, huge winners. How do you think about this, like this AI bottleneck trade right now, and this kind of how long this mini mania can last?
Well, that's a good question.
Everyone wants to know, right?
AI bubble or not? Absolutely. I think it's hard to tell. I think even here in the AI craze, I take a lot of comparison to maybe the altcoin market.
Sure.
I would say maybe there's a bit of a hype and too much euphoria, but I do believe you're gonna have some companies that will continue to outperform. And I think there's still a lot of good bets to make. I think it might be too early to call the top when it comes to that.
Well, if the IPOs haven't launched yet, then it's kind of like a pre-token project where the sky's the limit, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
But
absolutely.
I've been kind of formulating an idea that if these IPOs do kind of come through in Q3, maybe in Q4 bit, I think that would be probably the max attention on that trade.
Yeah.
And also the max... not pain, but like max lack of attention and apathy on the crypto trade.
And it's been like this before, I would say. I do believe kind of like the entire AI narrative took a bit away from just the retail investing scale in the crypto space. People just got so excited about AI, and that's where they put their money.
Yeah.
I think I'm quite happy when all of those IPOs are over and maybe the AI market cools down a little bit. Maybe people are flocking back to the crypto market.
And I've spoken to several investors about this, and they've said that quite a few of these early investors into this AI trade are also similar early crypto investors. So I think there's like a thesis here that's going to start to look at like a reshuffling of flows from that AI trade back into, those investors aren't just going to be like happy. They're going to be like, all right, what are we going to do next? And I think if crypto is in, a semi-depressed state, I think that could be a really nice setup for Q3, Q4, Q1 next year as that trade kind of completes, right? I almost think of these IPOs as like the completion of that trade. From there on, it's a whole nother investment thesis on it. But until then, it feels like all energy, all focus is there. OpenAI is going to drop one model, Anthropic's going to do this. It's
like
just,
on a weekly basis.
Right.
It's absolutely nuts what's going on right now. But I agree with you. And then you're going to have some quality projects that might look undervalued on a relative basis. And potentially we're going to see that capital rotation back to some quality project in the crypto space.
Yeah. I'm curious how much you guys in the research, right? I obviously spoke to Ellie about it, a bit more in depth, but there's this kind of growing, you need to have a business. What is your on-chain business model?
Yeah.
What is your token model? Are you doing buybacks? What is your revenue? You need to have clear, transparent financial modeling for the public. You need to have, these things starting to look more like equity structures with investor relations and quarterly calls and these like live streams that are happening and these types of things, right? Like the space just generally maturing to look more like the equity market. And I think a lot of this is driven by when you own equity specifically, you get some sort of wealth effect in terms of, that, there's a fiduciary duty to the shareholders, and that doesn't really exist in the token market currently. I'm just curious your kind of more broad view on how you anticipate the token model evolving and the token market evolving, and how much attention you pay to this, because perhaps it's just a bear market phenomenon. Everyone is upset about their assets, and so they're kind of pointing fingers, or perhaps this is like the start of a new era for the crypto market.
Yeah. I mean, we always said fundamentals do matter also in crypto. I mean, let's look at the previous altcoin seasons.
Sure.
They've largely been liquidity events, right? Especially during COVID, we had so much money lying around. We were just throwing at random projects and they all went up. And I think those times might be over, because as you said, like investors, they take a much closer look and they want to understand, okay, are there actually revenue? Are there actually cash flow being generated? And I think that truly matters. I think it's becoming much more of an equity analyst approach, where they want to see, okay, the business model and the tokenomics behind that. Even on the retail side, I think we're calling the BS a lot of times.
Yeah, of course.
And we want to see some real use cases or some real revenue models.
It's a show me the money market right now more than it's ever been.
Yeah, which is a good thing. And I mean, look at some of those. You could even make the case that some of the bigger projects, if you look at the fundamentals, they maybe have like 8 active users, but still billions in market cap. Is that justified? Of course, there's not enough liquidity to price it correctly, but those are some of the questions that we got to ask ourselves.
Right.
And I think that's where we truly want to see, okay, some true developer activity, some thoughtful tokenomics, revenue models, actual projects being built and solving real-time use cases,
and so
real-life use
perhaps
cases.
As the 2017 cycle was led by Ethereum's emergence in the ICO craze, as the 2020 and 2021 cycle was led by the alternate L1 kind of new chain craze, then the 23, 24, 25 cycle was kind of L2s and a variety of infrastructure, kind of like blockchain infrastructure. Perhaps it's this next cycle where the leading assets are those that look like a business, right? And that those kind of lead the market out. Yeah,
absolutely. And I think especially when it comes to the application, some of them might be more equity-like. And I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing. I think it makes sense. It's much more appealing to traditional investors. And that's kind of like how you drive flows.
Yeah. Adrian, just kind of closing out with 21Shares at the forefront of a lot of this ETF and ETP growth, as well as working with a lot of these larger scale clients, onboarding, new investors into the space through your products. What is the focus for you guys throughout the rest of this year? Obviously, it's kind of like a build year, right? It's kind of get your feet under you, be prepared for the next wave from a systems perspective, a personnel perspective. How do you kind of think about maximizing this time in the market, which is quite a bit more calm than perhaps what you're used to reap the outsized benefits of the upcoming bull?
Yeah. I mean, that's a good thing at 21Shares. And I think we're really proud in regards to our track record. This is not our first bear market. We've been around for almost 8 years. So we've gone through bears and bulls, and usually we know how to handle them as well. And I think that's what sets us apart compared to some of our competitors. And that's why we feel pretty much prepared. The good thing, I would say, compared to previous cycles is the interest is truly here. We're not fighting for existence anymore or for actual meetings. They truly are trying to understand, okay, how should we handle and deal with crypto assets? How should we allocate? How should we size them within a multi-asset portfolio? And in regards to media or traditional investors, private banking, we get so many requests, and it all leads back to education. I think that's really, really important. We had a lot of unlocks in regards to regulatory clarity, in regards to institutional railways, But I think the education is the last missing piece for some of those big allocators to invest in crypto.
Beautiful.
But we are product issuer.
Yeah.
We're going to come out with more products. We're here to provide access, to make it very simple for traditional investors to get access to this asset class. And therefore, of course, we're going to come out with more innovative products and are here to spread the gospel of crypto.
Awesome. Ladies and gentlemen, that is Adrian J. Fitz, the CIO of 21Shares. That also wraps our show for today. You're watching the Rollup, the home of convergence between digital assets and finance, guys. It is Tuesday, April 28th, live from the Empire State Building. We will be back live tomorrow at 12:30 p.m. Eastern. If you're watching on YouTube, we see your comments, as well as on X. Shoot us a like, shoot us a subscribe. We'll see you tomorrow out of the Tokenization Tower. Ladies and gentlemen, thanks for being here. Thank you, Adrian.
Thank you.